Joson Sanon says he's going to be one and done at Arizona State, and I'm here to tell you that's not a bad thing.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast. Stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every potential new hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And today we are going to be talking some ASU hoops. There was some big news that came out over the weekend that incoming five-star, is he a shooting guard? Shooting guard, excuse me. Joson Sanon announced that he is going to be one and done at Arizona State. Not a surprise. If we are being completely honest and completely transparent, this is not a surprise. I think this was always something that was going to be on Joson's mind and something that was probably the most realistic possibility here. And we'll start with that. Is the reason why this was most likely going to happen. In case you aren't aware, Sanon has already been projected as a top 15 lottery pick for next year. This was one of the most talented players in the country in this past recruiting class. He was a top 25 recruit on 24/7, and I imagine for ESPN and On3 and Rivals that he was also really far up there. I just use 24/7 for myself. But this is a kid that absolutely has a bright future ahead of him. And when you've got so much potential, so much upside, it should be very much understood that a player is going to be one and done. And it's not like this is new. This happens every year across the country. Sanon at Arizona State is not a small, not outcome, like a scenario, I guess. This isn't unheard of. And I really hope that fans aren't really upset about this. I hope that this is more than anything kind of seen as like a positive for Joson Sanon. We're going to talk about why it's a good thing, why it's a bad thing. But this was always a realistic possibility. Look at the situation that unfolded at Arizona. He committed to the Wildcats. He was in line for a starting position. Caleb Love, one of the stars of college basketball, announces he is going to come back. Sanon decommits and flips to Arizona State. That's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence. And Sanon said himself, this comes from the horse's mouth, that he was looking forward to a starting position with Arizona. When Caleb Love announced that he was coming back, that position was no longer open for a starting role. And he was wanting to go someplace where he could instantly be a starter. And I feel like that's going to be perceived bad. And that's also not fair, in my opinion. This is a kid that's so utterly talented that he deserves to be on the court. And at Arizona State, look, it's not like there's no talent. Adam Miller is still very much a thing at Arizona State. There are tons of really good guards at Arizona State. Sanon will have to compete, but with Arizona, there was just no way you're usurping Caleb Love. Again, he's one of the stars of college basketball. He was always going to be on the court. Joson has an opportunity to come to Arizona State, seize that starting role. It's right there for him. It's not going to be easy because he does have that competition, but he could wind up being a starter or at worst, just a really, really big time rotational player. He could be your sixth man in a worst case scenario. But let's go ahead and transition now. Let's talk about why it's a good thing, because there's really one big overarching theme here for why this is a good thing for Arizona State. And it's simply that he will be all in for the 2024-25 season. And this can be seen as a few different ways. But again, the overarching theme here, he is going to be dialed in. The first way is pretty obvious. He is going to be playing at a high enough level that it will determine his draft stock for next year. He obviously sees himself and sees that the media has talked about him as a top 15 lottery pick. He's going to want to be better than that. He's going to want to be able to get to the top 10, top 5, maybe top 1. The way he does that is playing out of his mind. He is going to be all in on this season so that he can be one and done, so that he can go to the pros. That's the goal for him. And again, the way he does that is to play elite basketball. So it's not like he's coming to Arizona State and he's interested in taking a developmental year or he's going to take his time. This is a guy who's going to come in. He's going to say, hey, I can play elite basketball. I'm going to show it. And then I'm going to go to the pros and I'm going to be a top pick. That's what we're looking at here with Joson Sanon. Now, this also was going to impact the way he plays the game from a mindset standpoint as well, not from a actual play standpoint. There's going to be a lot of competitiveness from Sanon this year. He is going to walk onto the court and he's going to have the mindset of, I am going to outwork everybody else. I am going to be the star of Arizona State. I am going to go up against every single one of my competitors, whether it's a small school team or Arizona or Houston or anyone else. And I am going to be the best player on the court. He's going to have that edge. He's going to be playing with the edge, with the competitiveness, with the mindset of, I'm the best guy out here. I'm going to prove it, and people are going to pay attention. I want them to say at the end of the year, man, Joson Sanon, he was one of the best players in the Big 12 this past season. He's also going to show a passion for the game. He is trying to sell himself to his future employers. The way you do that is to show that basketball is the most important thing for you. There's clearly a love, there's clearly a passion here for Sanon to come out and say, hey, I want you to look at me because future NBA teams, future employers, this is why you should pick me with a high draft pick, is because I am all in, is because this is the direction I want to go with my life. You want somebody who is going to be the best player on the court, whether it's collegiately or in the pros. I'm your guy. There's absolutely going to be that passion, that competitiveness, that mindset. To me, that's one of the biggest factors here for why it's a good thing that Sanon is saying he's going to be one and done. It's all about his future. So sure, maybe ASU only gets 1 year out of him. Quite frankly, if ASU ends up with a winning record and they go to the tournament and they make some noise, they get out of the round 64 for the first time in Bobby Hurley's tenure, that's a win. That's a big win for Arizona State. To me, and the way that I have talked to some people about this, get us to the Sweet 16. That is the best case scenario here for Joson Sanon and Arizona State Sun Devils basketball. Because you got the talent, even beyond Sanon. Jayden Quaintance is in this recruiting class. They brought in a ton of really good transfers. They brought in Alston Mason and Bashir Jihad. Austin Nunez is back. Brandon Gardner, BJ Freeman. There's a lot of good transfers that are coming in. You still have Amir Ali that's coming in through the recruiting class. I'm not sure what's going on with Bo Aldridge. I know he asked for a release from his letter of intent. I'm not sure what's going on there. Hopefully you can convince Sami Yane to come back, but this is a very talented Sun Devils team. You should absolutely be in the winning record category. You should absolutely be very competitive this year and hopefully get to the tournament. And if you get to the tournament, make some noise. You get out of the round of 64, that's something we haven't done in a long time. You get us to the Sweet 16, I'm in love. I would absolutely love nothing more than to be able to get to the Sweet 16. There are going to be expectations that are placed on Sanon. It's not just expectations he's placing on himself. Arizona State is also going to be taking a look and saying, "Hey, you're going to be one and done. That's fine. We're about it, but you need to be able to come out, play at a high enough level that the program ends up benefiting from you." It's a two-way street. It's not just all about Joson Sanon. But again, this to me is all a very good thing. But of course, it is a double-edged sword. And there are reasons why people might be sour on a decision. Maybe people think that it's a bad decision, just flat out, for Sanon to be a one-and-done player. And we're going to explore why it could be a bad thing here in just a moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find qualified professionals that are right for the role. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even for those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but may be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users will not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Of course, LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and may not have the time or resources to hire, which is why they're constantly finding new ways to make the process easier, even launching a feature that helps write job descriptions to make that process easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Wherever you get those podcasts, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's get back into our conversation now and take a look why this could be a bad thing for Arizona State. And I do want to put that in quotes here. I do want to say bad thing for Sanon, because at the end of the day, whether you agree with it or not, to me, it's irrelevant. You need to take care of yourself every single time. This is not the first time I've said this on the podcast. This will not be the last time I say it on this podcast. I am pro player. I am very much a take care of yourself, because sports can be very punishing and everything can be taken from you in a moment. In a snap of your fingers, everything could be gone. It could be on the court. It could be on the field. It could be on the ice, whatever. Everything could be taken from you. Take care of yourself. Whether that's one and done, whether that's securing your NIL, whatever it is, take care of yourself. With that being said, there are going to be people that are going to see Sanon is one and done, and they're going to say he is selfish. And you're very much entitled to that opinion. College sports are not what they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's just so different because of the landscape of NIL, because of the introduction of the transfer portal. Things are very different compared to what they used to be for college sports. Some of it is for the best. Some of it is very frustrating. Sometimes it feels like there are certain programs that are just able to borderline buy players. Programs that are able to flex their muscles because they are pristine blue blood programs. You have it in football with Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, USC, programs that are able to pull in guys because of the name brand recognition and because they have the backing of NIL. Basketball is no different. You have the opportunities at North Carolina, at Duke, at Kentucky. They have those opportunities for these kids. So when a player comes to a program like Arizona State, it's not a surprise that they decide to be one and done. Now, could this change? Of course it could change. Sanon could not have the successful year that he thinks he could. Or Sanon could totally be bought into Arizona State and decide he wants to play another year. We don't know for sure how this is going to play out. But there are absolutely going to be people that are going to say that Sanon is making a selfish decision. People that are going to say that Sanon is all about himself and he's not about the program. And with that comes a player that maybe just doesn't want to play team first basketball. I get it. I can understand that mindset, and I can understand why people would feel that way. And speaking of the mindset, speaking of the team standpoint, you may have Sanon decide that it is all about him. You could see him end up playing basketball that is simply for his benefit, and that Arizona State may not be able to field the best team that they possibly could, especially when you look at all the talent that's on this team. It is a possibility, and it is something that fans could be turned off to. Is they see that and they go, he's not team first. This is not someone that is interested in being a team first player. And it's unfortunate because I don't think that Sanon has earned that notion yet. But again, from a standpoint of why it might be bad that he has decided to be one and done, and from the standpoint of whether or not you're on one side or the other side as a fan, as an alumni, whatever, that is a possibility, is that maybe he does take the vast majority of the shots. And maybe this is one of those games where he just can't get anything to go down and the team gets hurt by selfish play. It is a possibility. I don't know how realistic that is. Because again, this should be, in theory, this should be a player that is interested in presenting himself in the best way possible. Because he does want that future in the NBA. But from a standpoint of why it could be bad, and again, we'll put those quotes in there, why it could be bad, it's just potentially selfish playing. And I just want to continue to emphasize, I am not on that ship. I think that we should feel positive about this. We should be supportive of Joson Sanon's decision to be a one-and-done player. We're going to talk about the reasons why I feel that this is a good decision for himself, a good decision for the program, and overall something that fans should be able to get behind for this kid. We're going to talk about it here in just a moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Summertime means baseball, NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet on all of it on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. One more time, wherever you're getting those podcasts, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Rounding out this podcast, what should you feel? How should you be taking in this news that Sanon will be one and done? What are your thoughts? First of all, let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment. I read all the comments. Would love to have a conversation. But in my opinion, the way you should feel. First of all, I've already said this, I'll say it again. Always be supportive of the players. At the end of the day, you need to understand that these kids are trying to take care of themselves. They cannot be focused on the needs of others. Now, there are caveats to that. You do want guys to be passionate about the program. You do want guys that are interested in making the fans happy, giving them a good product on the court. Of course, that doesn't just get washed to the side. But when a player like Joson Sanon says, hey, I'm going to be one and done, you need to be supportive of that. Think about it like this. What if your kid said he wanted to be one and done because he got a future in the pros? Are you going to be mad at him or are you going to support him? Even if it's at your alumnus. Let's say Richie Bradshaw is a 5-star kid with a future in the NBA, and I tell my parents and I tell my grandparents who raised me to be an ASU fan, hey, I'm going to be one and done. You would hope that they would still support me. The same way that I would hope you would support your kid. So this is no different. This is still someone who is going to be performing at your university, at your alumnus, at the team that you have been born, bred, and raised to root for. It shouldn't matter. Of course it will for some people. And I get it. I get it. But to me, and the way I think you should feel, is that you should be supportive of this player, of Joson Sanon, of anyone else who comes to the program this year, next year, 10 years down the road. Be supportive. Because at the end of the day, they still chose Arizona State. They still chose to come to Tempe. It would have been really easy for Joson Sanon to say, you know what, I'm going to stay at U of A. Or I'm going to go to Kansas. I'm going to go to Duke. But there's something that they believe in at Arizona State. And he chose to come to Arizona State, who, let's be honest, we're not a basketball school. We never have been. We are going to need a lot to change to get to that point. But let's go ahead and translate into that. You're going to arguably be in the best conference for college basketball this upcoming season. You needed to get talented. ASU got talented. A top 10 recruiting class in the nation. 2 5-star recruits are coming to this program. A ton of really talented transfers. They're bringing back good players. This is a program that is doing everything it can to stay relevant, stay competitive, and find a way to stand out in the Big 12. And a big reason for that is Sanon. In fact, it could be the biggest reason is Sanon. Because when you brought in Jayden Quaintance, the highest rated recruit in Sun Devil history, you were really excited. But you also understood that, like, hey, one player is not going to change the direction of this team. Then you brought in a second 5-star. Then the transfer class started picking up, and you're like, you know what? Maybe this team is trending in the right direction. Sanon was part of the movement. Sanon was the guy that said, you know what? It's not just Jayden Quaintance that's going to change this program. I'm going to change this program. And it could impact the future of Sun Devils basketball. You have a good season, you go to the Sweet 16, people are going to pay attention. You might be able to pull some very talented kids. I know that ASU is gunning for Koa Pete for next year. One of the 10, he might be top 5 recruits in the nation. Number 1 kid in the state of Arizona. You find a way to play competitive this year, show him that, hey, Arizona State is on the upswing. They are going to be a competitive basketball program, then it's worth it. And if Sanon plays at the level that he should be able to play at, Arizona State's going to reap the benefits of it. And a successful season will impact the future of this program for recruiting, for fan interaction, from a play standpoint, a passion standpoint. There's a lot that can change if Sanon ends up playing as well as he potentially could be. And the last thing I leave you with, why you should feel a certain way. At the end of the day, Sanon is not interested in coming to Arizona State and playing bad basketball. Quite the contrary. He's coming to Arizona State to play the best basketball of his career. He is going to Arizona State with the intention of being a starter, a full-time starter, being one of the best players on the Sun Devils basketball team, probably the best player. He probably wants to be one of the best players of the last 5-10 years for Arizona State. He wants them to win games. That's enough reason for me to buy into Joson Sanon coming to Arizona State and being one and done. Who cares? Dude, be one and done. And then go to the pros, be a top 10 pick. Guess what? We get to sit there and go, yep, we had Joson Sanon. That's former Arizona State Sun Devil Joson Sanon. Come on, what are we doing here? Do you think that people don't get to sit here and be like, yeah, James Harden, one of the great Sun Devils? Of course they do. Or Dort for the Thunder. There are tons of players that have gone on from Arizona State to the pros. And it's like, yeah, we get to brag about them. Sanon can be another dude that you could sit here and brag about. What is so bad about that? What is so bad about that? I don't know. For me, it's a pretty easy sell. Sanon could be one and done. Would it suck? Sure, it would suck. You have a wildly successful year. Jayden Quaintance has to play 2 years. You might get another really good recruiting class next year. You keeping Sanon would keep those opportunities open for you to be one of the better teams in the Big 12. But he may be one and done, and that's fine. At the end of the day, he's got to take care of himself. At the end of the day, he is still going to be playing the best basketball he can. He can't afford to not play bad basketball this year. So yeah, maybe it is one season, but it might be a really good season. But again, I want to know what you guys think. Leave a comment. Hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Stay in touch by following me on Twitter. Like I said, RichieBrads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Yesterday, we had a sit-down interview with Leif Fatanu. Check that out if you have not. There is another player interview that is coming up later in the week. I encourage you guys to stay tuned for that. We got plenty of player interviews that are going to be coming up during the summer. Now's never been a better time to get to know the team by hitting like, subscribe. I will see you guys next time. And until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.